So I was born in Boise, Idaho. I was raised there for a couple years, and then we moved down to the western slopes of Colorado.
Mackenzie played baseball, basketball, soccer. Soccer was her passion.
I am a competitive soccer player on Louisiana Tech Division I soccer team, so soccer is a really big part of my life. This just felt like home. I loved the coaches, I loved the girls that I stayed with. They just felt like a good community.
Mackenzie is the nicest, kindest, most loving person you've ever met until there's any type of competition to be had, and she's playing to win every day, all day.
Typically with NCAA schools, they have a start date. Well, a lot of the schools have their girls come down early and start training with captains and captains-led training just so they can get a jump on the season.
If you can get here early and you can start training in the climate that we're going to be playing in consistently, it is certainly a very helpful exercise.
She went down on July 19th, stayed with the captain in her house on her couch, and just was going to do captains-led trainings before they officially started on August 1st.
I don't remember anything on that day. From what I heard on July 25th, it was kind of just a normal day. We went to training off campus on a soccer field because we wanted a goal, and I collapsed during warm-up and went into a cardiac arrest.
I got a call from one of our upperclassmen at the time, very distressed. You could tell in her voice that something was wrong.
When that call came in, we were less than a mile from where Mackenzie fell out. And then we had an engine that was within a mile's range that they're usually not there.
We were going to put fuel in our truck, which is about a half a mile from the ballpark where she was. Our response time from the time of dispatch was 2, 3, 4 minutes, something like that. Went straight to her and saw that she was in a bad way.
When we showed up, she was dead. I mean, she had no heartbeat, so she was dead.
Felt for a pulse, no pulse. Immediately went into CPR.
Got her loaded up on the stretcher.
Doing CPR, bagging her, getting her back in the ambulance. We can see that our chest compressions are effective on the cardiac monitor right away.
We had been doing compressions for 2 minutes, so we went ahead and did a rhythm check. And her rhythm check was ventricular fibrillation. That's a shockable rhythm, so we ended up shocking her. On our next pulse check, no pulse, but still ventricular fibrillation. And then we shocked her again. And our next rhythm check, she did have a pulse.
You always get that initial relief, but in the back of your mind, you're knowing that it could go south quick again.
I got a phone call at 5:15, and I was like, why is she calling me? She should be training. And then that's when it was her teammate saying she had collapsed. You know, first you hear collapse, so you don't know details, and the teammate was saying, we'll call you when we get to the hospital.
Julie met me at the door, said, everything's okay, but your daughter had a training accident. She goes, well, she collapsed, but I've talked to the doctors, and she's okay. And so we started looking at flights, because it was like, well, maybe we'll fly her down, I'll wait a day, I'll pack up her car, I'll move her stuff so she's ready to move into the dorm. Because again, what's being relayed to us is minor incident, everything's fine. Well, as we started looking at flights and we started timing it out, it was actually going to be quicker if we just drove through the night.
Got a phone call a little after 2 a.m. saying she coded 3 times and she was put on a helicopter to life flight to Ochsner, LSU.
They're going to admit her, so you're not going to hear anything for a couple hours. After a couple hours, you can call the hospital and get an update if they haven't called you. And so from about 2 to 4:30 in the morning in somewhere in northern Texas where I couldn't tell you, we didn't know if our daughter was alive. And it was probably the longest 2 hours of our life.
One of the doctors talked to me and he kind of told me everything that was going on. And at that point, we hung up the phone and I said, well, she was at a trauma center. She had the people, the team, the support around her. She's where she needs to be.
My first thought was there's no way she's going to make it. She was pale, no response to anything. She was breathing very irregular, eyes half open, just no life to her at all.
This was a life or death situation. My first thought was, I hope we're able to keep her alive long enough for her parents to make it to Shreveport to say goodbye to her. Out of hospital cardiac arrest have a significant increased risk of morbidity and mortality. Roughly 50% don't even make it into the hospital. And of those who do, they have lots of long-term complications. It does depend on how long their body goes without the heart pumping. I basically came to her bedside shortly after she arrived here to be able to evaluate her heart. We did a bedside echocardiogram to look and see the function of her heart. We checked her pacemaker out to make sure that it was functioning appropriately, and we're able to see that she did have the ventricular fibrillatory arrest, and then worked throughout that initial day with Dr. Keespe, who was the ICU doctor, to help adjust medications to keep her heart pumping as best as possible.
We showed up to Ochsner LSU at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
There was a line of nurses that were standing in front of the door trying to prepare us for what we were going to see. One, can't prepare any parent for that. And two, there was no stopping us. We wanted to see our daughter.
We walked in and saw her, and, it was obviously a complete shock. But it was great to see her, alive.
I've seen a lot of kids with anoxic brain injuries. That's when you go without oxygen for a period of time. And she definitely exhibited some of those symptoms. And I was not encouraged that she would have a good outcome.
They decided to prone her, which means flip her over on her belly and see if we could oxygenate her better that way. While peds cardiology was extremely involved, Dr. Jones was trying to figure out what else she needed medication-wise.
I did initially think that she may not survive the first 24 hours. So we were able to keep her alive from that time frame and slowly began to adjust medicines, be able to take medicines off, be able to start different medicines to help her heart and the rest of her body recover over time.
At this point, it was more of we need to wait and see what her neurological status was going to be.
What they didn't know at that time was her cognitive ability. In that moment in time, the report back was Mackenzie was down from anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. They later kind of figured that out. There was probably more like 5 to 8, but even that type of time frame can have some serious impact on you cognitively. So they didn't know how she would wake up.
When you have a cardiac arrest, your heart is not pumping blood to the rest of the body. You're not getting oxygen. Oxygen is necessary to have functioning cells everywhere. The longer you go without oxygen, the more cells die. And it's estimated around 5 minutes is where you're going to have major loss of brain cells. I honestly would have expected her to be in a vegetative state.
Once I saw how she was, I kind of felt a little sad because I was worried that what I did see would be what we saw for the rest of her life.
I remember distinctly all she would do is look up and to the right. And then 1% of the time she'd look at you. I swear you could see her, and I would just continuously, and I know Julie would continuously just say, "Keep coming. We see you. Keep coming." But she couldn't cognitively do anything to anybody. And so we were talking with the medical staff around what's the next steps.
One of the things when her parents made it in that I talked to them about is we're going to talk about baby steps. When she wasn't responsive, when she started to be able to open her eyes, that was a huge step. When she started to be able to follow commands just by squeezing fingers, that was a huge step.
She slowly kind of started waking up. I think the first thing she was doing was she was blinking yes and no. And then I think the next day it was shaking her head yes and no. And then the next day she was mouthing words. At that point, we also felt not that we were out of the woods in terms of everything, but that we were getting our daughter back.
Ultimately, when she was able to get out of bed was a giant step.
You're going fast, girl.
Yes, she is.
She was in the hospital for quite a long time with physical therapy evaluating her, occupational therapy evaluating her. Our nurses did a tremendous job of, trying to keep her improving every single day.
It's almost the whole length of the hallway.
Once we got Mackenzie a tracheostomy and got her peg, she was able to wean off the vent fairly quickly, way quicker than what we thought.
Getting the trach, she can get out of the hospital quicker. We can get her out of the bed easier. She can work with physical therapy. And then the feeding tube, we can give her medicines without having to have something in a tube in her nose taped to her face.
We could start seeing some of the neurological deficits that we kind of thought were there in the beginning.
After she regained consciousness, we slowly started to work on her long-term recovery and with the physical therapist and occupational therapist. Our initial goal after, she survived was to get her to a long-term rehabilitation facility, and we were able to get her to TIER in Houston, which is one of the top-ranked rehabilitation facilities in the United States.
Mackenzie was in Houston about a month. When Mac first arrived at TIER, she still couldn't move her right side of her body very well. She was quasi-walking with a little bit of assistance moving the leg. The right arm absolutely wasn't moving.
You could see the fight in her that she just wanted to keep going. She just took everything in stride and just worked hard.
Of course, Mackenzie, being Mackenzie, who's completely driven as the day is long, was telling everybody from the hospital bed the moment she got there that she would be back playing soccer next year.
I worked my whole life to become a college athlete, so I wanted to keep trying to do that. I had to learn how to walk again, and once I started walking, I could do some more strength exercises and do some balance stuff.
It's incredible to be around somebody that never says, "Why me?" Now, I will say, I said it for her probably 1,000 times. Why her? Why did this happen? And she's just said, it's okay. I'll get through this. And she's continuously doing that. Mackenzie has battled since day one. Mackenzie was born with a heart defect. From that moment, hasn't been stopped. She's had multiple surgeries, and it's just another thing that she comes over. It's sometimes unfair to think of somebody that's 18, will be 19 shortly, having to constantly fight that, but I couldn't think of somebody better.
Mackenzie's a rock star. She is just a good overall person. She is a fighter. She is driven to be the best person she can be. I believe that's what led to her outcome, was the fact that she has this innate drive to be the best, to do the most, to be everything.
I just think that it's an absolute miracle that she is still with us for one, but back to her lifestyle and able to play soccer again. Never in a million years would I have ever thought from that first day seeing her that she would be playing soccer again.
Thank you. We love you. Thanks for getting our daughter back.
I definitely changed my outlook on my life. I went through a serious traumatic event, so I just don't take life jokingly anymore. At the end of the day, your life is your life, so do it to the fullest. I know it's gonna be a hard journey, but I'm still here. I'm gonna do this.